What's up guys, it's Bastian here coming at you with another old school Pokemon TCG deck profile. Today we are looking at the Blastoise Rain Dance deck profile for base Neo. Let's jump right into it. We're gonna start with the old star of every base Neo deck. Of course we are looking at a full playset of Cleffa. Don't know what hasn't been said about Cleffa that is important here. Usual stuff applies. Baby Pokemon difficult to hit, and you get Eek, which allows you to basically have a Professor Elm at the end of each of your turns. Really good for setup, and it's both a blessing and a curse at the same time. So, we are running 4 copies of Squirtle. If you have access to it, I would highly recommend to run the vending machine Squirtle. It is a way better copy. Shame on you, Wizards of the Coast, for not giving us that version as well, because it is a fantastic card. But this Squirtle is okay as well. It does give you Bubble, where you can flip a coin, maybe get a Paralyze and 10 damage. Chit damage, it's not the worst Pokemon to start with, and that's what we really care about. But Squirtle allows us to get into the big boy. As I've just shown you guys, the entire deck is built around getting Blastoise on the field. Not only getting Blastoise on the field, but also, very importantly, dealing ideally 60 damage with Blastoise each turn. How we do that is through the Rain Dance Pokemon power. As often as you like during your turn before you attack, you may attach one Water Energy card to one of your Water Pokemon. This does not use up your once per energy base attachment that you get for the turn. And this power can be used if Blastoise is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. Hydro Pump does 40 damage plus 10 more damage for each Water Energy attached to Blastoise, but not used to pay for this attack's energy cost. Extra Water Energy after the second doesn't count. By the way, they've used the base at 2 text on the reprinted Blastoises. The first thing I did when the 25th anniversary cards came out, I picked up 3 Blastoises and 8 Cleffas. So I got 12 Cleffas, so I can bring you guys a bunch of different Pokemon decks without having to take other ones apart. So with this in line, let's just look at what we use to support. I was running 2 Eagle buffs actually in this deck. But because you have so much draw power and we're running computer search as well, you can actually find your Wigglybuff if you need it. And I also found that more often than not, I actually didn't have the required energy to be able to deal damage with Blastoise during my testing. So I've added 1 copy of Allocate as well, just to make sure that if we can't attack, but we got a massive Blastoise out there on the front, we can just playful punch with Allocate from the bench and have a 50-50 chance of dealing 20 damage to our opponent's active Pokemon. Which is pretty cool. So, you know, ultimately, this is the current setup, running 10 basic Pokemon. 6 of them are babies. We got the 3 Blastoise and a 4 Squirtle lineup. I currently am trying this deck out without any Wartortles. And I will report back to you guys if there's enough interest to see how the non-Wartortle build is doing. Let's move on to trainers. We have a lot of them. Naturally, to be able to get us from Squirtle to Blastoise without a Wartortle, we're going to need Pokemon Breeder. And we are running 4, no less. This allows us to do turn 2 Blastoise. It can be a massive surprise to our opponent when we go from Squirtle to Blastoise, literally turn 2. And could potentially win the game if they don't draw into a second Pokemon that they can bench. Besides that, once you got your Blastoise out, for most matchups, you are not going to need more than 2 Blastoises throughout the game, just due to the 100 HP. We also have gold berries I'm going to go through in a second here. So they are very resilient. The rest of the Pokemon breeders can be fodder for other cards to be discarded to. We have 4 copies of Professor Oak. I was running a 3 Oak 1 Elm setup previously. I want to try and do 4 Oak setup, to be quite honest, because all we really care about is seeing the right cards in our hands. And when you've played all the water energies out of your hand, if it's not enough, you want to see more, the best solution is to Professor Oak and get what you need. But I could totally go back to the 3 oak, 1 elm setup as well. That actually worked quite fine. I just want to see how 4 oaks do. As I said, we are running computer searches, 3 of to be precise. These usually are used to get yourself one of the early setup cards for most of the decks, to be fair. Once you used up your early computer searches, after that they usually tend to take a backseat. So just think of computer searches as allowing you to have the ideal setup. So we like to see computer search in our opening hand, and 3 copy is usually a good place to sit with. We like disruption in any deck, so we are running 3 copies of Last. I would always like to run 4 copies of Last. There's just never really enough space for them, so 3 is a healthy number to be at. I certainly don't like to go below 3 for most of my decks. For those decks that I think that maybe less isn't the best option, I'm just going to not run any if possible, but a less and Eek combo is quite devastating for your opponent if they don't also have a Cleffa out as they're active when they get last, or they don't have one on their bench and it's difficult for them to retreat. As I said, we got 2 gold berries. Decks can also easily run Super Potion. It really doesn't matter much for Blastoise due to the Rain Dance. You just have a super amount of flexibility with getting as many energies on your Blastoise as you want. But remember that 5 can be a lot of energies to actually get onto that Blastoise. So don't worry if you can, only hit for 40, for example. Those will definitely stack up. But the gold berries will also ensure that we can give our Blastoise a very nice little buffer for it to be able to work with. So 2 gold berries. I might have to look at testing some super potions as well, though. A little bit more disruption here. 3 copies of SCR. Is super good in a Blastoise deck. You don't worry about discarding that 1 energy card, because again, Rain Dance just allows you to attach as many as you want to your Blastoise or Squirtles. And really the only other Pokemon that uses energy is a Cleffa, which is a one-off, so that will easily fall into your once per energy turn attach. 2 copies of Plus Power. I really wish this was 3 when I did my testing. Not once did I see it. This could be a good little card to fish out with a computer search, sort of mid-game, even late game. There's a massive amount of difference between being able to deal 60 and 70, and so this deck really needs that Plus Power. 70 will give you the Okos that you really want against Promo Mewtwo, Hitmonchan, Electabuzz, Rocket Zapdos. Those need to be dealt with as soon as possible, ideally, and Plus Power will get you there. Gym wise, I'm running 2 energy stadiums. The jury's still out on this particular stadium. I went and swapped it to 2 eco gyms. Then I thought, well, in all fairness, normally, and that's really my problem with no removal gym and eco gym as well, is that if your opponent wants to energy removal you, they are gonna get a gym, replace it, and there's nothing gonna stop them to energy removal you. At least Energy Stadium gives you that chance to play it and get that flip. So you do have a 50-50 chance of being able to retrieve one of the basic energy cards from your discard to your hand, and if nothing else, it's still always a good replacement gym. And another gym that I sort of find myself including in pretty much all the decks is a narrow gym. It's fantastic against Do the Wave decks. It's fantastic against Sneasel decks. Not that it's going to make much of an impact in either of those, against playing either of those decks, but it still is valuable, and I'd rather have a narrow gym out than nothing. But where narrow gym really shines, it's basically a scoop up if you can play it at the right time, because if you have more than 4 Pokemon on your bench, you choose one of them and return it and all cards attached to your hand when you play Narrow Gym. So if you have a heavily damaged Blastoise, make sure that you just get all the other Pokemons that you can get out of your hand. All the babies have free retreat anyway. Squirtle has 1 retreat cost, so that's not a really big deal. And if you got a Blastoise out that's taking a bunch of damage, you can get a free scoop up. It's not just a scoop up, it's like super scoop up on steroids that you get off Narrow Gym. So I absolutely love this card. There's so much functionality to it. It's ridiculous to think that as a child I didn't think anything of Narrow Gym. But there you go. I really do like Narrow Gym. Opted for 2 copies of Warp Point because I've been in a situation where I really wanted to choose what I send up onto the bench, and this can particularly be an issue if you do end up having a Squirtle down or 2 Blastoise, and particularly with Blastoise that 3 colorless retreat cost is super heavy, very difficult to get it off. And whilst Warp Point allows your opponent to choose what they send out, often it literally is a question between which baby Pokemon they're gonna send up, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. And I find that at least it allows me to get some movement on my opponent's side, whilst I can get the switch effect of Warp Point, which is to my advantage. To work with Warp Point, I do have 2 copies of Gust of Wind, and again I think this is really important to have in a Blastoise deck, that you can kind of pick and choose what you're going to be KOing when you got the right setup, all the energies, maybe that plus power as well. You just gust out whatever you want to KO and you just scoop up that price card for it. And then a bit of a mixture here. I am currently testing a number of different versions. When I was testing, I only had these 2 in my deck, and then I was wondering, should I go out and look for more SCR, Super Energy Retrieval, and or Time Capsule? But then I thought I actually didn't exhaust all the possible opportunities. I didn't look at using just a generic Energy Retrieval. I didn't really play the deck with a Nightly Garbage run. Whilst I do like what Time Capsule does, the drawback that you can't play any more trainers after this can sometimes be a bit of an issue, but even more so, I just want to see more of these. Now, when you look at Energy Retrieval versus Super Energy Retrieval on the face, you actually do net 1 extra card into your hand on SCR, because you play it and then you trade 2 other cards, so that's 3 cards, you get 4 basics back. On the Energy Retrieval, you play the card and trade another 1 card for 2 basics. But I have had situations where I just couldn't fully utilize a Super Energy Retrieval, and then if you're only getting 1 or 2 back, then it kind of feels a little bit like a wasted card. I do like to get maximum value out from all of my plays. Nevertheless, I still want to exhaust all the other options that are possible. And I probably would feel a little bit better if I had 2 Super Energy Retrievals, maybe 1 Time Capsule, and run the Nightly Garbage run. I wouldn't have an issue with that. I'm still very much, the jury's still very much out on these 2, whether it should be a one-off or maybe 2 Time Capsules. I do like having at least 1 in the deck. It's just that I don't really know how I feel about my opponent getting all those cards back as well. So maybe it might end up being a 2 Super Energy Retrieval, 2 Nightly Garbage run after all of that. But I don't know. I'm still testing. Nevertheless, this is how we get energies back into either our hands or back into the deck. I kind of do like the functionality of being able to just get cards back into your hand. But it is still somewhat. So what are you gonna sacrifice? You can usually get rid of Pokemon breeders. You can get rid of extra Clefas. Those are really the main options to get rid of in the deck. I have had situations where I had to choose between a Super Energy Retrieval and a Computer Search. If you need the energies, just get rid of the Computer Search. There's nothing else you can really do. So this is it. And then finally, we have 15 water energies. I was testing with 14. I think 15 is a good number to have. So next time I get a chance to play, I'm going to be trying out the 15 water energy setup. And again, I can do a second video on this if there's enough interest to kind of follow up on how it went what are good practices, bad practices. As much as it seems like a simple deck on the surface, there's actually a lot of strategy that you need to know about how to play the deck. You can't overextend early. That can be really dangerous to your opponent. Then, if you slow down and the opponent gets a chance to pick up, it is quite a problem. Also, as much as it feels like Rain Dance solves your problems with energy removal, you're really just giving your opportunities a lot of options to be able to do fully utilize their energy removals. And I found that I ran out of water energies before my opponent ran out of energy removals. It's not just the Blastoises you want to have energies, and you still want to ensure that whatever you put on the bench, Cleffa-wise, you at least have one energy reserve in your hand that you can put on your Cleffa. So there's quite a lot of energy strategy that comes into the deck. But besides that, it's an absolutely fantastic deck to play. I highly recommend it if you have some experience with playing the base Neo format. I still don't know if the Kingdra deck is my favorite or this one. I certainly have a lot of love for the Kingdra deck. It is definitely one of the most favorite decks that I have, but I definitely wanted to give Rain Dance a try as well. Now I'm going to link the Kingdra deck just here now, and if you guys enjoy this, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, comment as well, but make sure you like and subscribe. I need these subscriptions to be able to get the message out to more people who also busy themselves with old school games. So check out the Kingdra video if you haven't yet, subscribe if you haven't yet. Up until next time, Bussy and signing out. Peace.